Hello and welcome to Farm Connections. I'm your host, Dan Hoffman. On today's show, we meet with Arlene Jones and Cheryl Lee Hills to talk about Growing Acres, a grassroots initiative launched to inspire local foods and niche markets in the region. Kent Tesey helps us better understand what is all involved with tariffs and trade negotiations. We attend the Region 8 Winter Leadership Day for the FFA, and JoAnn Lower joins us to tell a tale about a tree and the very special meaning it holds for an old farmer. All here today on Farm Connections.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Farm Connections, sponsored by Alcorn Clean Fuel, a farmer-owned cooperative in Claremont, Minnesota, produces ethanol, high-protein livestock feed, and corn oil, and beverage-grade carbon dioxide for resale to benefit its members and their communities. Absolute Energy, a locally owned facility, produces 115 million gallons of ethanol annually, proudly supporting local economies in Iowa and Minnesota. Absolute Energy, adding value to the neighborhood. Southern Minnesota Center for Agriculture, promoting education and careers in agriculture, connecting students with college, curriculum, and industry resources to develop, fill, and sustain jobs with agriculture in our region.
Welcome to Farm Connections. We're at Riverland Community College for the Growing Acres Niche Markets and Local Foods Conference. And with me is Cheryl.
Hi,
Cheryl, thanks
Dan.
for being here.
Thank you for having us.
It's
very
wonderful.
exciting.
Arlene?
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, I listened to your presentation and I'm really intrigued. What drives you to have that passion and to share the story?
Well, the passion certainly is coming from the fact that we love our region and we love our growers and we love our place. And so that's, and it's important to us to make sure that we're thinking about those future generations that we want to keep in that place as a qualified workforce for lots of reasons. But passion else?
My passion is I'm a grower. I started this work as a grower, building market channels for my own farm, and eventually moving that out and bringing other growers into the economic development opportunities in our region. And the second reason, I live there. It's my region, it's where I live, it's my community, it's my home, and I care.
You care. That certainly came across in the presentation. But you mentioned region. We're in southeast Minnesota, Austin, Minnesota. When you say region, home is where?
For us, it's central Minnesota, 5 counties, Crow Wing, Cass, Morrison, Todd-Wadena, north of St. Cloud Market. But the region is really fluctuates depending on what we're talking about, because it really, those geographic lines didn't matter to us. It really was about where are our farmers, where are our supply and demand, and how can we make those connections. And so we took an autonomous approach to, it could have been a watershed region, a transportation region, it didn't really matter. It really did speak to who wanted to come to the table and participate in the value chain that we were building.
What's your main mission in Region 5 in the work you do?
My main mission is to support small family farms in an economic development opportunity to keep that ag land in ag production. And so you oftentimes hear me say we grow growers. We provide growers with technical assistance and other ancillary planning and training in order to provide education for them to scale up their operations back on their own family farms so they can participate in a larger market, which some of them have been traditionally excluded from. That's my main mission.
Region 5's mission is nebulous, like a lot of organizations, is to create quality of life in the region of which we serve. And that included, by the way, the ag economy and the agricultural sector. It certainly meant that we needed to look at providing healthy foods to our daycares and to our senior centers and to our restaurants and our colleges and institutions. And so that was a part of the threads that we wove to try to create that quality of life. And so it was important for us to think about how does this feed back to what was important to each organization. But it's not just Sprout and Region 5, Dan, that does this work. There are a lot of organizations, our community college, all of the partners that do business and technical assistance, and the healthcare providers who care about health and wellness, and a lot of other partners that cared about efficiencies and how we're being efficient with the resources that we have. Those that are vested in social cohesion and equitable solutions for populations that are emerging into our area. As an economic development provider, of course I'm thinking about the qualified workforce and what does tomorrow look like. And how are we going to be able to sustain those farms that Arlene's working on so that we can continue to not only feed our region, but the metro areas as well.
Well, you mentioned social cohesion. Can you expand on that?
Social cohesion is within the scope of our work, using the table of food as the common thread of blending the cultures and communities that live where we live. And so specifically working on bridging the gaps using art, ag, and culture, and bringing those communities together at a table to talk and to provide opportunities to showcase their language, their arts, their foods, their culture, and to highlight the diversity of the region that we live in.
Celebrate?
Celebrate, yeah,
yes.
Tell great stories. Because let's face it, Southern Minnesota, you have a container and it's your culture. And your culture is comprised of a lot of different diverse people, different worldviews, and that could be age, that could be gender, that could be, racial. There's a lot of diversity. You're blessed with that. And that's your container. And so what we said, well, what is our container? And how do we lift up the stories of folks? And food and art is not threatening. And it doesn't make people feel like when you enter into the space of education, sometimes people don't see themselves in that world because they're not sure they're theatrical enough and or academia enough, or they can have those conversations. When you're talking about food and you're talking about art, everybody has a say because they all have their own experiences, and that's what we're deploring with the work that we do through Sprout in Region 5, the local food value chain, is to say, how do we utilize that amazing fabric of people and have conversations that weave into other things that are important to us, like affordable housing, access to childcare, some of those things.
Comes together naturally around food and its people.
Right.
You also talked a little bit about rural to rural versus rural to urban. What's the different about that model?
Rural to rural is growing the food and feeding the people within our region, and then keeping those economic dollars circulating within our region, and not exporting our resources out of our rural communities. So using the work that we're doing, keeping our dollars local, and maintaining wealth that sticks where we live.
That sounds very schmarmy, like it could
Kinda-
be a little
technical.
bit, but it definitely, the rural to urban model is great too. It's nothing wrong with it. Those markets are more established. There's buying power because of the aggregation of people, economy of scale. Those applied economics folks will tell you that's what you have to do in order to create a successful food hub. We challenge that to say, that's awesome to be able to sell to those larger markets, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, being mission-driven organization, a social entrepreneur, and a unit of government that's trying to create quality of life for our people, meant we had to focus with our people. So that rural-to-rural model was a test for us to say, can we practice this versus just preaching it first in a space that allows farmers to profit here, our kids and our seniors and our residents to eat well and be healthier. We, in our 5 counties, some of our counties are some of the unhealthiest in the state of Minnesota, and all 87 counties. It stood a lot of reasonings led us down the path of saying we need to work on that first.
We need to work here first.
Some of it's diet, some of it's education.
Right.
It certainly resonates with some things I've heard lately. Imagine my shock as an agriculturist that grew up in this area, a farm kid, when somebody says, we've got a food desert.
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute. And then when I heard the definition of food desert, which seemed to be more than 50 miles from a retailer that's established it, that farm to farm all of a sudden takes on a new meaning.
Sure does.
That's right.
Sure does. And when in our work, it's a delicate balance between supply and demand. And the rural to rural model works for us because we have the dedication of the buyers in our region already that are helping us take all that we can produce at this time. Now, if we get our growers to a place where they can supply more than the demand is, we might move to that urban model, but we will feed our people first and keep that food within the economy of our rural region.
A relationship stand that we have in the region allow us to do that, and those are farmer relationships as well. When you're trying to establish even peer-to-peer senior farmers teaching emerging farmers, that takes relationships. And so rural is poised perfectly because we know how to build relationships with our neighbors. We know how to build relationships because those people we go to church with or our kids are going to school with each other, those are people that we see. And so that's a natural sort of approach for rural.
Love it. And if we do it right here, what can we expect for outcomes?
Super exciting ones, we hope. We're a little optimistic, and we've seen some great outcomes in central Minnesota in terms of grower incomes. We have seen new farmers be part of the value chain. We're delivering hundreds of thousands of pounds to institutions that had not purchased from local, and it's definitely more nutritious when it's local as well, so there's a piece that we subscribe to. It's not just the economic impacts, it's also some of the amazing stories around how cultures are talking to each other, like the Latino community and our tribal communities and how they're bonding and bridging with each other in ways that we never expected. So we shot for the economic benefit. We shot for what USDA and MDA teach us to measure. You do what you measure, by the way. And so we shot for acres, we shot for pounds, we shot for markets, we shot for all those things they tell us to measure. But we also have seen policy change from the amazing, courageous local elected officials. We also have seen social groups come together and start to talk about why they have some fear around emerging populations. And that's really some outcomes that we didn't expect.
I think you'll see better health outcomes in some of the work we've been doing with some of our healthcare agencies. We've seen better healthcare outcomes. I think you'll see children coming up through school systems with a greater knowledge of where their food comes from and why it's important to have healthy diets and how it contributes to their underlying success. And I think that all of that are the most beautiful ripple effects beyond the economic development and how many pounds we're moving, that you get to branch out and see some of those other layers of success, and I think that's where it gets to the core of the work.
An example of that is one of our partners funded a K through 12 educator to go into the high schools and teach more about ag education, right? And we've lost all those in our part of the state, and so to have an external partner, a purchasing cooperative, National Joint Powers Alliance, pay for a union employee to work with students, that's a win that we didn't expect, and it's beyond measuring what we're told is important.
We certainly hope to have you come back to the Growing Acres Conference. We hope this is something more than a one-time event. And at Riverland Community College, we're happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us, Cheryl.
Dan, and we're proud of your work, by the way. Very proud, so keep it up.
We think you're on the right track, and you're going to start seeing serious success.
Thanks for the good coaching. Join us for more on Farm Connections coming up next.
There's a common thread that runs through our lives, my life and yours, simply the need to love and be loved, to be heard, to be understood. Please listen to my story with your heart and your listening eyes, and I will hear yours. Hello. I'm JoAnn Lower, and I would like to tell you a little story about an old man in a tree. Why don't you cut down that tree? It's old, it's broken, it's barely alive. If you cut it down, you can grow more corn there, more bucks in your pocket. Guess I could, the old man nodded. But that tree and me, we go way back. I was once young and strong. I farmed this land, and with my wife, we raised our children. The tree, too, was once young and strong, a sanctuary to families of birds. But now we are both old and weary, beautiful only in the eyes of God, and yet families of robins come to build their nests in these branches. Just as my grandchildren come to sit around me and hear stories of the farm. No, I decided to leave the tree right where it was and farm around it. And so I thank you, my friends, for your wisdom, your concern. But you know, this old tree and me, we've become friends. I still find comfort in her branches and at the very base of her. This old tree and me, we're pretty special. We still have a use. This old tree is where I come to pray.
During the past several months, trade agreements between the United States and other countries have come under much more scrutiny. Whether it be trade relations with China, renegotiating the NAFTA agreement with Canada and Mexico, or trade agreements with other countries, it appears that the United States is moving away from free trade agreements and moving toward more restrictive trade policies. These more restrictive trade policies could have serious impacts on future trade agreements with the United States and certainly could have a big impact on agricultural related products. Tariffs are basically a tax. The tax or tariff on goods and services affects imports coming into a country, but usually the other country responds with tariffs of their own, which affects exports that are leaving a country. Tariffs on imported goods into the U.S. can result in consumers paying more for their goods, and tariffs on exports going to another country can result on higher prices being paid on those products by consumers in the other country. For example, if the U.S. Is selling soybeans to China and the going world price is $10 a bushel, and there's a 25% tariff placed on that, the price from soybeans coming from the United States becomes $12.50 a bushel. If those soybeans can be sourced elsewhere in the world at a cheaper price, the Chinese processor may choose to buy those soybeans from another country rather than the United States. Adding tariffs on goods and services tend to discourage imports into a country and encourages more domestic production in a country, or encourages a country to try to source those goods and services from another source. Other trade measures that are designed to restrict trade include export quotas and embargoes. A good example of that is the 1980 Russian grain embargo, which caused serious impacts to the U.S. grain industry and affected U.S. agriculture and farmers for the entire decade of the 1980s. The bottom line is that tariffs, embargoes, and other restrictive trade measures are meant to discourage trade rather than encourage trade. Trade negotiations are often very complex. Many times they involve issues other than just economic issues, including labor, environmental, and social issues with the negotiating countries. It's far too early to predict dire consequences from current negotiations with China or renegotiation of NAFTA or other agreements, but certainly the agriculture industry and ultimately rural communities have a lot to gain or lose depending on the outcome of these trade negotiations.
On location at Riverland Community College in Austin, Minnesota, with me is Lene Schweistal. Lene is going to help a little bit on telling what's happening today at this contest. What is happening here?
Today is the Winter Leadership Day for Region 8, so there is lots of different contests going on and interviews, state degree interviews, proficiency interviews, different speaking contests, region officer interviews for Region 8 for next year's region officers. So there's a lot of different things going on today.
Lene, you're the chapter advisor for the Austin High School FFA. Yep. Much work leads up and much preparation leads up to this. When did you start prepping for this event?
Some of my students started prepping before Christmas, so filling out their state degrees and their applications before then. People start practicing for contests well into this past fall. So a lot of preparation comes into this day. It's a big day for my chapter, big day for all the chapters in the region.
I'm so impressed with the professionalism, not only of you, but of the students you brought with. They're sharp, they're clean, they look good, they're sounding good. It's really neat to see that. And we don't always see that in every youth group.
Yeah.
How do you pull that off?
A lot of patience. It's pretty good. We teach a lot of that in class and bring the best kids here, so they are definitely very professional when it comes to being out in public. High expectations from all advisors, so they do a really good job at events where we're out in public.
Thank you for what you do in that realm. I noticed also you have several judges from the community and from industry. For example, there's some Hormel people here helping. There's some people from Ag Partners from a different town. Why do they come to help this event?
Well, it helps us out as advisors because we can't be everywhere all at the same time. But it is nice to get community involvement to see how our young people are doing in the community and how they are with their leadership skills. So it is nice to get people from Hormel or from any organization in the county, in the region, to help out with different interviews and different contests as judges or as on interview panels to help out.
And great experience for both the industry person and the student.
It is, very much so.
What happens after this event in your chapter?
I guess related to this event, if any of the contest members make it to state, they'll compete at the state competition in April. And then any state degrees or proficiencies will get awards also at state convention. So that's kind of directly related with this contest in this day. So
the proficiency interviews are happening also?
Yep, they also have proficiency interviews going on at the same time today.
So tell us about that event.
A proficiency interview deals with a student's SAE, which is their supervised agricultural experience. Kind of think of it as like an ag job or some sort of payment that they get for doing a task. And it's just looking at their records and their involvement and skills that they've learned through that SAE, and they put it in an application, and hopefully if they do well, they'll place high within their category and then get an award for that. It's very much so.
FFA advisors and ag teachers put a lot of time in above and beyond what they get paid and contracted. Why do you do this?
For the love of it, I guess. I don't know. I really enjoy working with students, working with agriculture. So it's a way to be able to do both, to work with students and to work within the agriculture industry, community, and whatnot.
In your career of teaching, what's maybe been the one standout thing that makes you go, wow, that was worth it?
I guess there's a lot of different things. Just seeing, in the classroom-wise, seeing kids connect to the material and kind of put two and two together that is agriculture versus not knowing what it is. But then FFA-wise, definitely seeing the students excel leadership-wise and within the organization as a whole, as a region officer, or if they move on to state leadership. It's just fun to see their advancement and their involvement within the organization.
Growth is important to you.
It is very important, yes.
What's your hope when they go to State FFA convention this year? Do you have some goals in mind?
We'll have a couple teams competing there, so hopefully they will do well. That's the goal there. But it's also just getting the members out to meet other members too. So there's a lot of I guess networking between even the members, that they talk to each other and meet throughout the year, and then it's kind of a nice gathering location for students at the end of the school year, or towards the end of the school year, to get together.
And how do parents fit into this equation?
Parents are very involved, or can be very involved, so a lot help with different contests, coaching, getting students to places on time and getting them there early in the morning, or picking them up late at night if we're getting back late. So parents are very important with the whole concept of everything that we do. Very helpful.
Well, I know you have a great fruit sales or ag commodity sales. My wife and I bought some wonderful fruit. We shared it at Christmas time. What's the outcome from that? Do they learn skills in sales? Why do you do it?
Well, we do it as a fundraiser for our chapter. So we earn money for our chapter, and it's good for egg sales and getting kids out talking to the public and sharing what they know. A lot of people ask questions, but yeah, it definitely helps with paying for students going to different conferences or camps or transportation, things like that. So it's a really good fundraiser for our chapter.
Do you have a program of work that you put together each year for your chapter?
Yeah, we have a program of activities, so it just kind of lists all the different fundraisers and events and things we do locally, in the community, region-wise. So it's just kind of a roadmap, I guess, for all the stuff that we do throughout the school year and summer.
Well, and it's been wonderful to watch you and Nick Schultz, the advisor of the Agriculture and Food Science Technology Club at Riverland, work together. And it looks like your students feel comfortable coming into the community college and being part of that environment. Is that true?
Yeah, from what they've told me anyway, that they are comfortable and they like coming here and doing different things. So it's kind of a nice different group to meet with, college students with high school students, and kind of mixing them together, working together is nice.
And thank you so much for what you do. Good luck today.
Thanks.
Stay tuned for more on Farm Connections. No matter how new to something we are, or how long we've been around, we all need something to ignite a spark, something or someone to inspire us. It's different for everyone, and it can be found in many forms all around us. Whether it's an encouraging word, a story shared amongst friends, or just plain youthful exuberance, inspiration keeps us growing. What inspires you? I'm Dan Hoffman. Thank you for joining us on Farm Connections.